Hello, and welcome to the Deal Breakdown. I'm Wesley with Opt Real Estate, your buyer specialist.
And my name is Phong Tran with Tran Property Group. I'm your seller specialist.
And
And
together
together
we
we
are
are
the
the
Deal
Deal
Breakdown.
Breakdown. All right, guys, we got a very special episode for you guys today. And so, buying a home can obviously be very overwhelming, confusing, and honestly pretty damn intimidating, especially with everything you hear online. One person says it's a terrible time to buy, and then another person says, honestly, if you don't buy now, you're going to potentially lose out. And so today, we're going to be pulling back the curtain. I'm sitting with you guys today, a top producing buyer's agent here in the Portland metro area, where we're going to be covering behind the scenes actions of what it takes to buy a home, what matters, what doesn't, avoiding costly mistakes, and really potentially avoiding overpaying on a house. And so if you're considering purchasing your first home, your next home, or just wanting to know more about the real estate market, definitely tune into this episode. And so I want you guys to get introduced to my fellow host here on the Deal Breakdown podcast. I'm sitting here with Wesley Colebank of Opt Real Estate, a top producing real estate agent that sold over 20 homes last year in 2025, equated to roughly over $15 million in sales volume. 20 considered one of the hardest years in terms of real estate, especially in this decade. And so, Wes, in one sentence, who are you and who do you help?
One sentence. First off, thank you. Oh my gosh. One sentence. Who am I and who do I help? I am Wesley Colebank, the buyer specialist, and I help people that want to find the right home for the right price.
I love that. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the introduction, obviously 2025 was it was a difficult year for me and of course a whole bunch of other agents. And we'll get into statistics down the line at this episode. But like, what was it like for you? Obviously, you sold over 20 homes, $15 million in sales volume, obviously success. But what did you see? Like just behind the scenes, maybe that's just all statistics and front running numbers. But what did 2025 feel like for you?
That's a great question. What did it feel like for me? Anecdotally, what I saw a lot was the pulling apart of the top agents and the bottom agents, not to attack the bottom agents, if you will, but I feel like the disparity between the top 5% of agents was pulled further away from the other 95% than ever before. And I mean, I can go more in depth on why I think that is, but that was the biggest thing that I saw. And then anecdotally, from a buyer's perspective, I saw a lot more beneficial negotiations probably than ever before. On the buyer side, it definitely was leveraged more on the buyer side with closing costs and concessions being paid for, with negotiating price point up front, sellers being more willing to repair things. It just felt more like the buyer was in the driver's seat. And so the buyers that didn't take all of the news that they saw to heart and actually figured out it was the right time to buy got a smoking good deal.
Yeah, and so you mentioned briefly closing costs, they got good deals, below asking price offers. Would you say the scale was starting to tip in towards more of like a buyer's market or like a seller's market, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a buyer's market for sure. I mean, we ended the year here in the Portland Metro with 3.8 months of inventory. And when you look at that big old scale thing, hyper buyers market, hyper sellers market, I think you got to really also take into consideration your market and what it yeah, exactly. You got to be localized to the market. And again, everything I say today is no slight. It's just absolute statistics. If you're living in, a small town in Wisconsin, right? Or a big city with a lot of real estate moving hands, like a California or like a Portland, then you have to take that into account. And so with 3.8 months, that's a lot. That's more than we've seen in years, many years. And so it definitely leaned heavily in the buyer's favor. So I would say buyer's market. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with Wes here. I for sure believe it's in a buyer's market, especially here in the Portland Metro, including Southwest Washington, like the Vancouver, Camas, Washougal area. And so, if you had one word to describe the current market, let's not assume it's a buyer's market, but like, what would you say?
One
One,
word to describe the market. Man, one word. Opportunity.
I love that. I love that a lot.
Opportunity. I think you want me to go into why?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Opportunity. I think that when you look at wealthy people, generational type wealth, or people that make good money when you pull everything apart in terms of like long-term assets, a lot of those people buy in the down markets and they sell in the good markets. Whereas people that are led to believe, oh, it's 2.5%, interest rates are so low, and all that, I'll be that's great. How many people overpaid for their house during those years? So many people. And you don't know what you're going to have to do in 5 years. Let's say you bought in 2020, you paid 50 over, and you have to move, and 5 years later, you're probably losing money more than likely. Yeah. Opportunity also in, I think that it's the opportunity cost, if you will, if you're not entering the market there is no perfect time. I know a lot of people wait for the perfect time. And what they end up doing is they end up waiting years because the news says now's the perfect time, or they see everybody else doing it, FOMO, if you will, like in 21 and 2020. And so they jump in, right? It happens with everything, no matter what, whatever's hyped. Labubu, I'm looking at you, right? Everybody has FOMO. And so they buy at the high. And the people that come out the other end the best are the people that bought at the low and sold when the hype was there. So if you're waiting years and you don't purchase now, maybe you get your closing costs paid for right now, you're missing the opportunity to gain equity in the 2 years you would have waited, or however many years you would have waited for the perfect market. So, yeah.
I love that. That was a great answer. Guys, viewers, opportunity in terms of buyer's market and purchasing here in 2026. And so I like what you mentioned very briefly during that segment was generational wealth. And so we've said it many times in other episodes that real estate is the greatest hedge, or if not the best hedge of what? Inflation. So as your dollar is slowly devaluing over time, but real estate will continue appreciating over time. Yes, there's going to be cyclical years where it's a little bit more depressed, but would you agree, like, it's the best hedge against inflation?
Absolutely. Of course, it is the best hedge against inflation. The big reason being, well, two big reasons. I know you know them, but let's reiterate it for our listeners, for our viewers. When you look at an asset, the best type of asset is an asset that has a finite number to it, right? And what Bitcoin is worth so much because there's only so many that will ever be found and made and whatever, right? And so now we're picking apart the pieces to own just a little bit of one. When you look at the Earth, albeit very big, or the United States, albeit very big, obviously nobody wants to live in Glacier National Park, or can they? But there's only so much land. There's only so many homes that are available. And so it is a finite asset. And actually, I'll go with three options. The three things. Number two is everybody needs a roof to live under. Or at least that's the goal, right? For most people. I know there's a lot of people that, they're all about like van life or okay. We're talking about the majority of humanity wants a roof over their head and a place to call home. How often do we hear the no place like home, right? And so you automatically have it being very emotionally charged. It's probably where your kids are going to grow up or where you're going to spend a lot of time. And so it's beneficial in the fact that it serves a purpose and that it is where you lay your head at night, where you do most everything, eat dinner, have family over, friends over, you name it. It's home. It's an asset that you can use. I can't take my Apple stock and like go around and hang out with it, right? Or, hey, friends, come look at my Apple stock. Like this is a place that you use, but it also double features as an asset.
And it's typically the biggest asset that most, Americans here in the US actually hold in terms of nest egg, their retirement, so they can travel, constant income. And so, Wes, obviously, I am the seller specialist over here and you're the buyer specialist. How long have you been a buyer specialist? And actually, why did you choose to become so specialized in buyers itself?
Okay, that's a great question. First, remind me to come back. I have more reasons from before if we have time. But okay, why a buyer specialist? When we look at buyers versus sellers, right? Any realtor listening to this should understand this or already understands this. When you're working with a seller, the product is the house. It just happens that the seller owns that product. You are selling the product. Okay. Regardless of the owner, it's all about the house and the product. And it's number crunching and it's market statistics and it's negotiations and marketing strategies and all of these things for a product. The person's not the product. When you're a buyer specialist, a buyer's agent, the person is the product. The home is the product in a way because they're looking to buy the home, but it's less about the like physical thing and more about why they're buying the home, and it's to raise their kid for the next 10 years. So your product is the dream, is the life that they're going to live. And so it's a lot more emotionally charged. It's more logical for sellers, right? And I'm a in the disc profile a high I, if you will. And I know you're like a D. Yeah. So with a high I, you work with people emotionally more and you're more social with people. And so it's more about the rapport and helping people realize the dream of owning a home than just selling a product to make money.
Yeah, completely agree with you. And so, for sure, Wes is a high I. And so, again, what that means is he just relates and he connects to the majority of consumers, builds relationships, connects with people much easier versus myself. I'm a DC. And so maybe the connection isn't there unless I'm actually going out hunting for it. And so, that is a very good reason why I think Wes is probably one of the best buyer's agents that I've personally known. And so,
And to before you
yeah,
continue
go for it.
so a DC is essentially D is like dominant, right? There's more words to it. Essentially, short, sweet, to the point, very direct, if you will. And a C is someone that's very analytical, right? And so when you look at a seller, really what they care about is price, how much they could get for their home. And so a C can break that down, and then a D can get direct and to the point. This is how much it's worth. This is what we're going to do. For the buyer, it's less about the numbers and more, can I afford this? It's not about the dollars and cents. It's, yes, I can. This works with my life. That's really the only financial thing that they're thinking about. They're not thinking about, can this sell in 10 years for more?
And it's definitely like whenever you're working with a buyer, obviously I work with buyers and he obviously will work with sellers too. But working with buyers is an emotional thing, because it's typically first time home buyers. It's one of the biggest purchases of their lifetime. Typically closing costs are much larger than sellers. And so there's just a lot of factors when it comes to emotionally purchasing a home
And
compared to working with a seller.
And also, especially in today's market, it's very emotional for a buyer because they see like a huge number, especially in our market, they see 500,000. And it's so big that your brain kind of can't compute. I liken it to, you ever gone skydiving? Okay. So I've gone a few times and I love it. That's why I've gone a few times. When you're in the plane, it's like I'm in a plane. It's rickety and shaking and you're like, this is like really like real. And then you jump out of the plane and it is so surreal that it feels fake. Like Chrissy did it with me once, my wife, and she goes, it felt like a green screen as I was falling. Like it didn't seem real because it's so surreal. So when it's honestly, and I mean, you feel the wind coming up on your face, but you're looking and you're like, this is so surreal. This is not real. Your brain can't compute because human beings never jumped out of planes. Like we didn't evolve to understand it. So it's yeah. So when yeah, when you have a buyer looking at a house, they don't compute the 500K ever, right? It feels like a green screen. It's not a real number to them. The real number is how much down payment they're going with or how much per month they're going to pay. Those are the real numbers. For sellers, the real number is the big number. Yeah.
Awesome. Obviously, when it comes to working with a buyer, it's a specific process. Same with a seller. There's going to be a lot of myths. There's going to be a lot of misconceptions when working with buyers. What would you say is probably one of the biggest myths that buyers oftentimes believe, but is actually not real? Especially when it could be the process of potentially getting pre-approved or the actual transaction itself, but anything along when it comes to the buyer itself. The biggest myth.
The biggest myth, I mean, we already talked about like the right time to purchase, high interest rates are never the right time. So I won't beat a dead horse. But I would say the biggest myth for a buyer, I'll go twofold here. The biggest myth for, I would say, a big subsection of buyers is I can't buy a home. Okay. And a lot of people are like, I need to be like wealthy I need to have 20% down. I need to make 6 figures. I need to have all of this, that buying a home is reserved for the few. So I think that's the biggest myth. At the end of the day, great example is someone I'm in contract with right now. We're going to close next week. 0 down. They're not VA. They're nothing except that they have 0 down and they went with the Washington bond program. So, and then in this instance, we had all the closing costs paid for on this home. So all the downside of this Washington bond is gone, and they 0 down and they're able to afford the monthly payment. Wow, amazing. Somebody that had 0 down, $0 to put on a house, just is about to purchase a home. A very good home, mind you, in Vancouver. The other subsection of people, and a much smaller subsection, is that sellers that put an asking price, they're ready to get a low offer, or they put in a buffer area, if you will. So if something's like listed at 525, they listed at 525 because they're expecting 500. And so I get a lot of buyers, and it comes to mind because I'm working with a few people like that will send me, I'm sure you've had the text or the call. They send me, hey, what do you think they'd take for this? You get that all the time? Yeah, I get that all the time from buyers. And I go, I have no idea. Because at the end of the day, the seller says yes or no. I could tell you what it's worth because of the market, because of comps, because of whatever. But a seller's going to say yes or no. They could be wrong, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple motivators when it comes to selling, when it comes to the seller. And so, yes, it's very common for a seller to be like, oh, I want a buffer. I want to start at 525 because I'm expecting, anywhere between 450 to 525 in terms of offers. And so you made a very good point about, what was it, the first one? What did you say?
I can't afford a home.
Yes. And so it is a big myth that technically most people can purchase a home, like those 0 down payment options and low down, deep down payment assistance. And so I think it's pretty scary whenever someone wants to even try to get pre-approved. And so I think just even starting the process of getting pre-approved to see where you financially stand. So both Wes, myself, and then as well as your lender can actually give you guidance. Maybe you're not potentially ready now, but now we have a plan of action of what to do in 6 months, a year, and potentially next year. So you're a little bit more guided into actually purchasing home rather than saying, oh, I'm not going to get pre-approved until I find the house. Well, once you find that house, it might be already too late. Yeah. And so great answer. And so this leads me into the next big question. I'm sure you've heard, especially since it's now 2026 for our viewers, that about 70% of agents didn't sell a single house in 2025. I think in the entire US, we have about 1.3 million real estate agents. Again, this is just the US. So about 70%, what is that, like 90,000, give or take? I don't know the exact number.
I'll correct your stat here.
Yeah.
It's a million. A
million
million
real
agents
estate
did not sell.
Okay, so
a single home.
700K. Oh, a million didn't sell. Okay. And so that's a pretty damn big number. I forget what the actual numbers were for back in 24, but I saw this number, 70% didn't sell a single house. Obviously, there's going to be coordinators and assistants who are just licensed because they have to be, and they're not going to sell a single house. But I want your thoughts. Obviously, you sold over 20 homes, and so what is that, like less than 1% in the entire US in terms of top agent? So like, what are your thoughts on 70%? Because me personally, it makes me a little sick because one, there's oversaturation, and then two, there's a lot of inexperience and maybe not very mature agents just making us look bad, maybe more of a car salesman. And so, yeah, what are your thoughts? Why does it matter? I guess here's the question. Why does it matter choosing the correct buyer's agent or even a seller's agent whenever you're potentially interviewing? Because would you agree most of the time a buyer will not interview multiple agents? Typically they find somebody versus a listing agent.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. So I'll answer that question. And I'll go back to your previous question. When I get a client or a lead, an opportunity, right, with someone, not necessarily a client just yet, it's interesting because it feels more often like consumers are ready to have lenders pit against each other and they're willing to shop around for like multiple lenders. I would say it's rare that they're open to, like, pitting agents against each other, except for listing a home. I'd say for a buyer's agent or for buyers, most of the time they're clicking the schedule a tour button on Zillow and they're like, the first person I talked to is my agent. And I get that. It's easy, it's ease, right? It's just, oh, first person I talk to, convenience, that's the word. Open the door. Great. You're my agent. Put this offer in. The problem with that is is seemingly obvious, but maybe need to reiterate it. I just talked to a lady earlier today, before you got here, and she was interested in this property that we're seeing tomorrow. And I just straight up talked to her about the zoning code for this property. It's CFU, commercial forest use. And I've done enough homes within my career, almost about, 60 homes in the last 3.5 years. And so mixed in there, I've had to deal with timber. I've had to deal with something like this. And so I was able to just answer her questions and depart knowledge because one, maybe she doesn't want to spend the time driving out there to go see it or even considering it. But two, now she goes, well, okay, now I can consider the benefits and the pros and cons of this property. It's not just a house sometimes. There's more to it. And if you have sold one home and it just happens to be, that one home that your mom bought with you, 400,000, very straightforward up and down, you're not going to learn the ins and outs of negotiating. You're not going to learn the ins and outs of the benefits, much like a CFU property, commercial farm or forest use rather. You're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities. Washington bond, again, I'll bring it up. Most people don't know about the Oregon bond and the Washington bond. And when you get an agent that does one deal, two deals a year, they don't have the relationships with the lenders. They don't have the relationships with the contractors to go, hey, this is available to you, by the way. You should talk to this person. So that's the big thing there.
I completely agree. Just to touch on that real quick, I think what really separates these, I think in Portland Metro, I think we have about 10,000 agents in the Metro itself, including Southwest Washington. I think what really separates a really good agent and a bad agent, again, I don't want to sit here and talk about bad agents, but it's really just the experience and knowledge, knowing how to actually produce in a tough market that we're in. For me personally, I've been working with a little bit more buyers, especially at the beginning of the year. I'm entering multiple offer situations sometimes, and which is common, especially in about 20% of listings in the entire metro. And so I think it's important to really, you don't necessarily have to interview multiple agents, but really look into them. What does their digital profile look like? Do they have reviews? Are they one producing? Do they have a track record of success? Do they have peers that are actually going to go at that? Do they have access to lenders and banks that can offer these first time buyer programs and such as the Washington and Oregon bond?
Couldn't agree more. And yeah, but I don't want to tell the new agents entering that there's no chance for them. Obviously, we started and we hit the ground running fairly well between the two of us. And that's because we had the student mindset. We're not quite there yet. Yeah, you got to be coachable. You got to put yourself out there and learn. You got to shadow people that are more experienced. You got to go to conferences or go to events to learn from other people. You listen to podcasts, you read books, you do everything you can to sharpen your mind to actually sit there and know and sound, but also know what you're talking about. I want to go back to the 70%. So in 24, we talked about this. 74% of agents didn't sell a home. This time is less, right? Less than 74%. And I know that you sounded upset because of the saturation. I'm the opposite. I'm happy because it's oversaturated. The reason it went down is because a lot of agents left the business and before 2025 even began. A lot of them left. We're probably going to see it again in a few days. So the ratio is probably similar, but we're seeing people leave because a lot of people entered into the business when it was hot. They entered into the business because they thought it was easy money. And we entered into the business when it wasn't easy money. And so we've seen the garbage, the dumpster fire. And so I can't wait till a great market because we stuck through it. And so we get to rest on our laurels and say, hey, we stuck through it. We did the hard part. Great market. Again, it is saturated because a lot of people get into real estate because they think it's easy, big money. They're like, looking at commission checks. You make how much percent of the sale? Oh my God, that's easy, big money. What they don't realize is how much work it takes to get to the person that is going to sell or buy a home, and then the work it takes to do it correctly.
Ooh, you made a very good point. And then it's like what I mentioned at the very intro. It's like we're pulling behind the scenes of actually buying a house because a lot of the stuff that you guys see is just obviously paperwork, documents being passed around. But there's a lot of work that we're doing behind the scenes that are it can be thankless at times for sure. But just know that your agent, whoever it is, us, is actually truly working for that dollar because at the end of the day we don't get paid until the home closes anyways. And so going back to multiple offer situations, obviously I've been dealing with that a little bit. What is more important to you? Or I guess let me rephrase the questions. What's usually more important when it comes to dealing with multiple offer situations and trying to have the client understand that there's probably other terms or things we can structure and maybe not just price in itself?
Great question. I actually 2 weeks ago with a friend's old boss, right, that I've gotten to know over a year via phone. She's in California. Great person. No, different. We put an offer in on a home 2 weeks ago, and I told her she's not here, so I went there myself, did a video tour, sent it to her, and put my eyes on it. And I called her and I said, "Hey, this thing's gonna go fast, and this thing's gonna go high. Just so you know." It was listed at 165. I'm like, ain't no way. Ain't no way in your backyard, Milwaukee. And I'm like, ain't no way this is going for that. And I straight up told her, I said, "Hey, I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to compete and we're going to need to compete hardcore." And the question always, exactly. The question always comes back to how much do you want this home? Don't look at the sticker price. Okay. There's the sticker price, but if there's a bunch of demand, that's not the price of it. I mean, the price of it is who's going to pay the most. That's how much it's worth. And so there ended up being 24 offers total. It's the most I've ever seen. I was part of an 11 offer one last year, but this year, 24 beat my record. We offered above ask cash, not like a ton above ask, but above ask cash. And I straight up told her, I said, "I just want you to know I definitely want to write this because I'm your agent. And when you tell me to write an offer, I have to write an offer. I'm going to tell you right now, we're not winning this house." And she goes, "What can we do?" And I said, "Honestly, do you want the big honest truth is you waive your inspection. Okay. And cash, you close this deal in days and you're done. You sign, you send them you send them earnest, you sign paperwork and you send them a boatload of cash. And that's the only way we're going to win this." And then I said, what I always say, I do not recommend you waive your inspection. Never waive your inspection. But to answer your question, it's the only way we're going to win at this price.
I love how you structured that. How you answered the question for your client. Obviously, it's like, yeah, we can win by waiving it. But then you helped your client by saying and gaining the trust by saying, but I don't recommend it. That's pretty powerful because a lot of times, whether it's a new agent or somebody that's a little bit inexperienced, they're going to say, let's just waive the inspection so we can win the deal. But where's the trust? Where's the rapport being built? Obviously, this is your sphere. And so there is going to be something that already standard. Now, why don't you typically recommend waiving inspections for any buyer? Now, I'm the same way, but for our viewers, what is the downfalls?
My God, the biggest thing ever. Okay,
real quick.
There's a difference, real quick. There's a difference between waiving your inspection and saying you won't ask for money or repairs. Okay, very different. As is, as you will. You never waive an inspection because you're going to live in the home or you're going to have someone else live in the home. And if the roof falls down, the foundation cracks and settles, or the HVAC explodes, that is, instead of $200,000, you're now paying $250,000 for this home because you have to fix all these things, right? God forbid you're living in it and it's unsafe. So really, the inexperienced agent will waive the inspection to get the deal because they haven't been in the business for 2 years. When they get the call back in 2 years, our basement flooded. We didn't know about X, Y, and Z. And you're like, well, you waive the inspection. So you automatically lose that client. You lose the trust. You lose all of the people they know. So you'll never get a referral. So from a selfish standpoint, that's stupid. But you're hurting people. You're actively not doing what's in the best interest of your client. So never waive the inspection. Ever, ever, ever.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You're just honestly shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, that's the contingencies automatically waived. And like, let's say days later you view the property, for example, this out of state client of yours. What if she comes in, flies in, she looks at it after overpaying, waiving inspections, and then she realizes that she didn't like the area of Milwaukee or didn't like the neighbor because the house looks busted up. I don't know. And so there's just too much, too many consequences of waiving your inspections. So completely agree with you. But if a buyer was straight up was like, let's waive the inspection. I want the house. I love it. They've seen it. How would you reduce the risk for
That's
that?
a great question. How would I reduce the risk for myself?
For yourself and obviously for your consumer client as well.
Okay.
Because waiving inspection is obviously
Yeah.
huge. That contingency is gone.
Got it. Okay. So, first part of that, to protect myself. Obviously, it's like what I just did. Now, most of the time, you're either talking in person or on the phone. There's no written record, there's no recording. So, you say, hey, I always recommend that you do an inspection. Even if you're not going to ask for anything, I always recommend you do an inspection. At least have a contingency to do so. That's always going to be my recommendation, no matter who it is. No, I want to waive the inspection. I'm going to ask them 2 or 3 more times, like I did. Are you sure? Are you sure? It's not my recommendation, not my professional recommendation. But at the end of the day, you do what your client wants. Thankfully, within the offer paperwork that they're supposedly reading and signing, they're signing it saying that they're waiving the inspection. But even after that phone conversation, I'm sending an email encapsulating our entire conversation and saying, in my professional recommendation, I recommend we do not waive the inspection. During our phone call, however, you said that you want to waive the inspection, and I am your real estate agent. That is your fiduciary that will do what you would like to do. So I'm sending you the paperwork to waive the inspection. But all along the whole process, there's multiple places that you're signing things. At a company we used to work for, there was a waiver. I had to deal with this for another property that I ended the 2025 with. Was we had an inspection contingency. I said just do it, even though you're going to essentially redo the whole home, rehab the whole home. Just do it. Be aware of it. And we got the home. We're in contract, and the buyer, she goes, well, I'm just gonna. Now that we're in it, I'm just gonna waive the inspection. My husband saw it; he doesn't think we need it, and I'm like, but we're already in contract, so why waive it? Let's just wait. Let's just wait. And if you want people to come out or you want to go check it out again, you can. You have that right. Due diligence period. Maybe you decide against it. Just wait. She's like, you know what? That makes sense. A couple days go by, and she says yet again, I want it to be done. I want to waive the inspection. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? She goes, yes. And I go, okay, I'm going to send you 2 different documents. One saying that you are waiving this, and then the other one that says you are waiving this that we're going to send for the seller to sign as well. So that's how I protect myself. To protect my buyer, I'll tell you this. So you have earnest money for a reason. Okay. If you put, let's say it's $500,000, you're probably putting about $5,000 in earnest money to protect my buyer. If they didn't have an inspection contingency, I would, and for some reason they didn't have that, just won the home, and I would still tell them buy an inspection, even though we don't have a contingency before we close, because $5,000 is a lot less than $5,000. I would tell them break the contract,
Yeah.
protect yourself.
And to kind of carry that leads me into my next question. Obviously, what really separates a very good experienced agent like Wes and I versus someone that is bad and that maybe just sells a couple homes a year is really recommending things. Not necessarily agreeing to everything the client says, but is actually guiding them, giving recommendations, thoughts, and that instead of just like, being a little bitch.
I think too.
Sorry, I didn't know a better word.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Because at the end of the day, we are professionals. They need our guidance. That's why they hired us. And so with our experience, we have the information to be able to help them. Now, oftentimes when it comes to you're in a transaction, the client is buying a house, inspections arise, maybe there's something chaotic. I do believe what really separates a good agent is from a seasoned agent is someone that is recommending maybe for them to potentially back out of the house because of something, rather than being the agents like, oh no, this can be fixed because they're maybe chasing the commission. So when should a buyer walk away from a transaction with a house?
Whoa. Okay, first off, it's all about Is this a safe and secure home? During the inspection, I say the same again, we've done so many between you and me that we become scripted in and not only when we're, like, trying to sell someone on us to become our client, right? But we become scripted in just that we tend to say the same thing over and over again, like the inspection thing that I just said. When I'm at the inspection, if my buyer's there, I always go to my inspections, okay, personally, and I always invite my clients. I want them there because a lot of times the client, again, being thinking more as a real estate agent as the job, usually I'm on the phone with someone maybe once or twice, and then we're seeing homes, right? Unless it's a long lead up, maybe somebody I already know. Then you're on the phone a few times, but you're on the phone and then you're in person touring the house. And let's say you see 3 homes, you're in separate cars, you're driving. Then the time that you're at the home, they're looking at the home, trying to imagine if this is the right home. They're not conversing with you. They're not there and connecting. And I always invite them to the inspection because that's 2, 3, maybe even 4 hours that I now get to connect with them and talk about the house and ask them about their family, ask them about their goals forward, right? Family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. I get to ask them all of those questions if I haven't already. And if I have, then I get to just talk to them. Be like, what are you going to do in this room? What's your idea about this? And you have more time instead of 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there, 30 minutes there. So
So that's awesome because most agents, including myself in the past, I definitely go to every single inspection now because mostly that reason is the connecting. It's really understanding one, the house, what they're potentially purchasing. But I mean, that truly makes what makes Wes here a really good, established and experienced buyer's agent.
and then also, obviously, you're there with the inspector, and sometimes the inspector will say, "Hey, come over here," and point stuff out. Or if the seller or the buyer's there, then maybe something they had a concern about. They get to go, "Hey, inspector, can you take a couple extra minutes explaining this thing, looking at this thing?" So that's a big one. I forgot the original question. Okay. Yeah. So when the buyer should walk away from a house, and so I'm at this inspection with my buyers, right? We're talking, and I say the same thing to them. What we're looking for is not caulking missing. Okay. We're looking for safety and structural issues. I say that every single time. And the reason I say that is because one, you want to walk into a safe and secure home. You don't want to feel in danger when you go to sleep at night. Also, though, roofs cost a lot of money. Foundations cost a lot of money. And so you're going to have to pay out of pocket to fix that. And especially for the Washington bond, they can't, right? That's just not possible. So if there's big enough issues that can't be fixed, can't being the seller won't pay for it or they don't have the money to do it themselves, terminate, walk away, we'll find something else.
Completely agree
Yeah.
with you. And again, it's more of being willing to walk away from a deal or a transaction rather than kind of persuading or being salesy and essentially trying to force a sell onto a buyer that you're working with and maybe a conflict of interest and maybe it could be a potential regret. And then again, that's the emphasis of kind of this episode is like, what's the difference between a good agent and a bad agent? And I think the difference is being willing to walk away from the dollar signs.
And then real quick, I think another thing, and we've built the sniffer for it, the sniff test. Sometimes some things seem a little off, you know? And so I I would if there was, like, concerning things, I think a bunch of little things throughout the transaction, like the disclosures were interesting or the communication was weird or something just didn't seem on the up and up or I don't know. I probably generally the due diligence period is there for a reason, right? And usually it's encapsulated within the inspection contingency because that's usually the longest contingency, but you also have other ones. Seller property disclosures being one of them. Title, right? Preliminary title report. Are the sellers going to be underwater? Like what? There's so many other things that can happen that usually don't happen, but can happen. And that's probably another reason I'd say walk away. Let's make it easy.
Yeah, I mean that's a great answer. I mean, and then you briefly touched base like really providing the expectations of what you can and cannot ask during the inspection. You can't nickel and dime them asking for caulking, whatever. And, oftentimes, especially since I'm working with a lot of buyers now, is I'm reminding them, even before we get into the transaction, the process of a repair and what to do. Because as a specialized listing agent, I last year I received so many repair bids asking for literally 20 to 30 items, and
Replace the 3 inches of trim.
yeah, it's one, it's ridiculous. Two, it's again, it kind of boils down to experienced and inexperienced agents.
You're not acting in good faith.
Yeah,
We forget
100%.
that a lot. I think that just the culture we're within is everybody's trying to get ahead of everybody else, and they're all trying to find a deal, right? They're all trying to screw over someone else to make more profit. And not everybody, but I think that's just kind of the culture that we're in. Why Wolf of Wall Street's so damn popular in this business that we are in. Yeah, is you're essentially you're screwing someone over to get money. Okay, and so I think a lot of buyers are like, that seller's trying to screw me over because they said no to my caulking, or the seller's like, oh, that buyer's trying to screw me over because they want the caulking. Right? Spend the Saturday, go to Home Depot. Okay, seriously, go to Home Depot, buy the caulking, buy the tool that makes it all pretty, and spend, again, another hour on your Saturday putting the caulking there, scraping it on, and you're done.
That easy.
People don't think about that type of stuff. They think, oh, this needs to be perfect. Come on.
No, I
Anybody
agree.
can do it.
No, I agree. I agree with you. I just went under contract, and even after repeatedly telling my client, it's like, we can't nickel and dime them. We're gonna only ask for major things. He's like, oh, I want them to refinish the hardwood because it's scratched up. And I flat out told him, I was like, no, like, we can't do that. Like, that is I can understand your
Totally.
concern. Understand your concern, but at the end of the day, this is a resale house. This is not a new construction. We can ask for it because I'm your agent, and I will have to do what you want. But at the end of the day, most likely, they're just going to counter and say, no, we're not going to do that. We ended up not even asking for it.
Nice. I really like my comparisons for people to like understand, like with the skydiving, obviously in many episodes before. Think about this. So you go walk into a home, okay, and you tour the home. You can set the amount of time you want to tour the home. Mind you, some sellers are not going to let you in there for 2 hours probably, especially if they live there. But if it's vacant, nobody else is showing, go for it. But the expectation is you walk through the home. Let's go with your floors. You should look at the floors when you tour the home. And if you notice there were scratches and you put the offer in on the home with the scratches, the expectation is you want that home with the scratches. The inspection is for you to understand things that you did not see during the initial tour or you did not understand because you're not a professional. So if you bought a car from Toyota and you came back and you're like, hey, the seats are red, and I know that I purchased it when the seats are red, but I want you to make them black seats now. Think about that. They'd go, ha, ha, ha. You saw it was a red interior, so you went for it. But if the engine broke because you are not a mechanic, then that's something they should fix. Okay? Like,
perfect analogy.
buyers, chill out.
Wes, the man of Mr. Analogies. All right, so now we're heading into the end of this podcast episode, and so I just have a few more questions, and so hang with us. Oh no, you're totally fine. Hang with us. And so, what's something buyers don't worry about but should?
Don't worry about but should. The lender that they choose.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Tell us why.
Big reason why. Okay. So I have been in enough transactions, I know you have as well, where, and again, I script it. I tell people every time. I've gotten so good with buyers, I do the same thing every time. Your job is to set expectations. I tell them this. The first 2 weeks of your month-long escrow is going to be batshit crazy. You're going to get property disclosures. You're going to get title reports. You're going to talk to title. You're going to turn in your earnest money. You're going to be talking to me a lot. We're going to schedule the inspection. We're going to go to the inspection. We're going to probably get contractors out. We're going to then negotiate with the sellers, do all this. And then we satisfy all these contingencies 2 weeks in, usually, and then it goes silent. And then there's 2 weeks of limbo. And I tell every buyer I work with, hey, first 2 weeks going to be crazy. It's going to be a flood. Last 2 weeks, you're going to be like, I used to talk to Wes every day. Now I don't. It's the one I'm in right now. I haven't talked to them. I talk to them every few days, even if it's, hey, no update. Just want to let you know there's no update. That's customer service.
No, that's good. Actually, I'm going to actually start doing that because I actually never give them expectations of what happens. But you're absolutely right. Literally the first 2 weeks,
Yep.
batshit.
And then the 2 weeks, the reason it's not batshit for you and your clients anymore is because it's out of your hands now as a realtor, and now it's in the lender's hands to get the appraisal for the lender, and then they send it to underwriting, and then they gotta get the insurance binder for the home insurance for the buyers, and then they gotta get the CDs out to get that signed, and then you gotta wait 72 hours. So if you're with a bad lender, buyers, so again, my recommendation, have a good lender. They need to also set expectations and upfront expectations. They can't just say this, "Hey, we're ahead of schedule. We're gonna close early." Okay. What they should say is, "Hey, honestly, we're doing really well. We could probably close early. Obviously, talk to Wes, your realtor, to see if that's possible with the sellers. And if it's possible, great. And if we can, and I give you full green light that we can close early and we'll set that up with title. But just so you know, if we close a couple days early, you're going to pay extra interest." What was the difference between we can close early and what I just said? You're setting expectations and you're not being underhanded that they're going to pay $160 more. Okay.
I love that.
So, yeah. And then the last thing is you need a good lender so you can close on time. You don't need someone that's just like not there. I know a lot of lenders, okay? And I know good lenders because they're like us and they work like dogs and they keep on track. And then I know other lenders who, I'm not going to name any names here, but what they do is they schmooze and they drink and they golf and they do all these other things that they're not available. I've had lenders screw me over because they were doing their fun during the day and they missed the window when the market's closed to update them on their interest rate by now.
Completely agree with you. I think having someone that you talk to frequently, and especially on the weekends, because homes are sold on for sure on the weekends. A great example is this. Literally this past weekend, I hit my lender. I needed a pre-approval. We needed to submit an offer ASAP because it was a brand new listing and they already had 2 offers. He literally got home from skiing in Mount Hood within an hour, got me pre-approved that night, and we submitted an offer. We competed. We didn't win the offer, unfortunately. But I mean, just having the speed of action. Speed is the name of the game when it comes to new listings. Like I said, multiple offer situation, you have to be fast. You have to have an agent as well as a lender who's willing to work sometimes outside of that, of typical working hours to get deals done.
Again, it's setting expectations. Even with this lender, I could guess probably who it is. But even with that lender, if they were like, "Hey, I'm out of town. I can't get you a pre-approval until probably 6:30 p.m. tonight." Is that okay? If it's not okay, then at least that they've told you that. Like, and not just saying, "Oh, totally," and then you don't hear from them for 6 hours. Like, you could be screwed. You need honesty and full disclosure. So yeah, lender, choose the right lender.
Yeah. Avoid online lenders like Rocket Mortgage too, because you've heard the news. Anyways, so Wes, last couple questions. This is more geared for you guys out there. If someone is on the fence, like maybe some of you viewing about buying a home here in the Portland metro, what would you tell them?
First question I would ask would be why, right? It comes down to affordability, I would assume. Typically, right? Yeah, we have enough inventory. It's affordability. Trust me. Portland is the fastest growing West Metro city. Okay. And by 2035, we'll have a median price of about $1 million. How would you feel if I transported you in time 10 years ago to San Diego, to San Francisco? You'd probably buy it. You do everything to purchase it because you go, "Oh my God, look how expensive it is." 20 years, whatever. It's same thing here. Okay. We've had a rough patch, obviously, where prices have stabilized, have not shot up because people are like, they're used to 2019, 2020, 2021. Oh my God. Money. Again, long term, it makes sense for Portland. However, I would also set the expectation of only buy a home if you truly can afford it. Go home, take your time. Talk to an agent, not a month before you need to move. Okay. Talk to them 3, 6 months before you need to move. Talk to a lender 3, 6 more even before you need to move to check your credit, check everything. Budget. How much money comes in every month? How much money goes out every month? Make sure you look at that rent too, or mortgage or whatever you have. If it's your second home, and say, "Can I afford $3,200 a month?" Or whatever it's going to be for the home. Maybe you bring in 10 with rent, maybe it's 2,500. Can I afford an extra $700 a month.
That's
If
good.
the answer is yes, no brainer.
Yeah, I mean, you emphasized it there clearly, exactly how I wanted to hear it. It's essentially planning, because I've heard a great quote. I'm sure Wes heard it. I think he's the actual one who told me that if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. And so when it comes to buying a home, yes, it is a buyer's market. But when it comes to those hot homes, shows well, very clean. Typically, those homes are being dealt with multiple offer situations. And so to wrap this up, we have one last question that I want to ask Wesley Colebank of Opt Real Estate. What is one piece of advice, just one piece of advice that every buyer needs to hear right now?
Start early. Start early. A lot of people, we were at brokerages, and I know you do too, still now, where we would cold call. Okay. No, obviously, well, I'm sure we'll talk about it in another podcast. I'm obviously not at my previous brokerage anymore, but we would cold call a lot. And the number one, maybe number two, because a lot of people would say just looking, but second to that would be, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. Maybe I'll buy next year. I'm not ready yet, blah, blah, blah. The wrong agent is trying to make you buy right now so they can make the payment on their new car, right? The right agent is someone you need to sit down with now so that they can introduce you to a lender now, so that in the year when you are emotionally and physically ready, you are set up for success. There's so much rushing with people sometimes in this industry that they don't plan for a lot of stuff. I met with a seller Saturday, just a few days ago. And we're sitting there and chit chatting. And he goes, I watched this video. I watched this video on YouTube about agents, about commission, about pricing a home, all of this stuff just on YouTube. This agent was just talking about how to price your home. And I sat there and I'm like, my man, that's amazing. And he goes, I'm not listing until spring or summer, but I wanted to talk to a few agents and see what they thought. I was like, I'm so proud of you for understanding this stuff and starting now. And so for buyers, it's the same thing. If you talk to a lender, they can help you get your credit in order. If you talk to a real estate agent, they can talk to you about what makes sense, what you need to do. Start early, and so you can do it right.
Yeah, I mean, start early, do it right, so you can have a plan of action, whether you're potentially buying now, 6 months, a year from down the line, but having a good plan from a team that we assemble, like the Avengers that Wes always says. Your lender, your buyer's agent, your seller's agent ultimately is going to dictate whether you have success when it comes to a transaction on your future home, or if you're potentially selling a home. So Wes, I'd like to thank you, and of course our viewers like to thank you for diving deeper into your mind of really what it takes to buy a house, what are the pros, what are the cons, what people should avoid, and avoiding costly mistakes. And so this is the deal breakdown. So we dove deep into Wes's mind, and I'll let you close us out.
Well, thank you, Phong. I truly appreciate you taking the time to figure that out. And I'm glad that we did this.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, no, it absolutely was fun, and put me on my toes. It's always good. But yeah, hey, hopefully you enjoyed the episode. Again, thank you, Phong. And next week, I think we're going to talk a little bit more about we're gonna get into the nitty gritty about brokerages, and we're gonna get into the nitty gritty about agents, and a little bit more behind the scenes for people that aren't real estate agents. So stay tuned. I am Wesley with Opt Real Estate, your buyer specialist.
My name is Phong Tran with Tran Property Group, your seller specialist.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next episode.
See ya.
Cheers.